Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Basel Pod. I'm Sam Basel, joined alongside Jordan Laube, and this is episode 5 of our 2025 NFL Division Previews. Today, we're going to be talking about the NFC South. I kind of dragged the NFC South a little bit in one of our earlier episodes, talking about how it's frequently been in my lifetime the division where I've seen the most under 500 division winners, but still, it's a competitive division. It's really fun. Some really great teams and some great fan bases. So, Jordan, overall, what are you excited about from this year's NFC South?
I think there's a lot of change happening in the NFC South for each team. The Bucs obviously losing Liam Cohen and having to replace another offensive coordinator. The Falcons, who Michael Penix Jr. is going to be starting for a full season, and they've loaded up on this defense, which we'll get into later. The Saints are the Saints. They need to accept that they are in hell and need to rebuild the next 5 years, but it's Mickey Loomis running the show, so he's never going to do that. And then you have the Panthers, who are a really sneaky team this year that I think a lot of people are counting out because they label Bryce Young as a bad quarterback, is how he's played the first 3 quarters of his career. And nothing could be further from the truth. This is a team that could win this division if all goes well.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's start off with the current reigning division champions, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, obviously led by, Baker Mayfield, who – we talked about it yesterday in our last episode about the Cleveland Browns, how, they kind of just, they dealt them away. Right. And then, he had a stop in Carolina, stop in LA as the backup to Matt Stafford. But now, this is fully his team. This Tampa Bay Buccaneers team is kind of the team that he, it should have been the Browns, but he took control of the Buccaneers, kind of made the best of a situation, and helped them get to a 10-7 record last year and win the division and get into the playoffs. But this year, there's a lot of turnover again, specifically in the offensive coordinator department. So could you kind of talk about that new hire for Tampa Bay, and then how that affects Baker Mayfield heading into this season?
Yeah, so the new offensive coordinator is Josh Gizzard. He has spent the majority of his career as a receivers coach with the Dolphins, and he served as the pass game coordinator for the Buccaneers last season. And a lot of people think these are just throwaway titles, but they're really not. They're looking to see where it edges in the defense. So pass game coordinator, they're looking at the weaknesses. They're looking at pass plays that they've run that they can help exploit the defense that they're facing. Same thing with run game coordinators. They're seeing which linebackers aren't coming downhill fast enough. They're seeing which defensive linemen struggle the most at locking out and maintaining their gap. Like, pass game and run game coordinators on both sides of the ball are incredibly beneficial to teams, and that's why we've seen a burst in this market. And you're even seeing it at the college and even the high school level. In some coaching cycles, I've been offered the run game coordinator position or the pass game coordinator position. Like, it is very much a real thing in football across all levels, and it is something that should not just be chuckled at like, oh, it's just an add-on title. It's really not, and you're helping the offensive coordinator focus on his job of coordinating the offense that he has in front of him, rather than having him worry about, okay, where can we get run leverage? Where can we get pass leverage? Yada, yada, yada. So Gizzard, obviously he hasn't been in a play calling position before, but now we're going to see him do that, and I think he should slot in really nicely, especially because this is a record-breaking offense last year. If you look at the fact that they had over 5 yards per carry and over a 70% completion rate. That's never been done in the history of the NFL. And they ranked in the top 6 in a lot of key analytic categories, which we'll get into in a second. But just to get back to the offensive coordinator shuffle, not just for the Bucs, but for Baker Mayfield, this is going to be his 8th offensive coordinator since he's been in the NFL. He had 3 offensive coordinators while he was in Cleveland. He had 2 in 2022 when he was with the Panthers and when he was with the Rams, which the offensive coordinator for the Rams is Liam Cohen. So I think that Baker Mayfield had a hand in getting Liam Cohen to come to the Bucs after he spent a year in Kentucky. And then he's had 3 different offensive coordinators with the Bucs. He had Dave Canales, obviously Liam Cohen, who was awesome last year, and now he's going to get Gizzard. With that, now it's, okay, who else is helping run that offense? You have Kevin Carberry, who was the offensive line coach last year. So you have Carberry, who is very familiar with Liam Combs' run scheme. So I don't think there's going to be a change in the run game. So people that are worried about Bucky Irving, don't. He's going to have another great season. And then this pass game should not miss a beat because he was running the pass offense last year, right? Like he wasn't calling the plays, but he was helping tailor this offense to help Baker Mayfield. So in theory, they shouldn't miss a beat on offense, and they should be, I don't think as good, because this was like the ceiling of what this offense could do. At least I think it was, just based on no team has ever had 5 yards per carry and 70% completion rate. But there is room for improvement. They were 5th in EPA per play. They were tied for 4th in EPA per dropback, and they were 6th in EPA per rush. And the success rates pretty much follow suit with that. So this is a really, really good offense. Yeah, they have some question marks with Mike Evans and how much longer he's going to play, and Chris Godwin, but they've loaded up guys behind them with Emeka Egbuka. I know Jalen McMillan's going to be out for the first half of the season, but he's another young stud. Tez Johnson was an absolute playmaker in Oregon. He's going to have a little bit of a learning curve coming into the NFL, and his playing size, you don't see guys his size succeed in the NFL. It's outside of Tank Dell, which unfortunately he's had some gruesome injuries in his early career. But just drafting and how they've modeled this offense, I really think that they could be as good as they were last year. Maybe not better, but there is room for improvement.
Yeah. And last year was Baker Mayfield's best season as a passer in pretty much every category. He did lead the league in interceptions with 16, but that's not his worst season, right? Like he threw 21 interceptions, I believe in his second or third year. So for you, where could Baker Mayfield specifically improve?
I think not, because here's what's great about Baker Mayfield is that he will make the throws no one else will be willing to make, because he's the cockiest player in the league, and I mean that as a compliment. Like, he doesn't care if a safety is bearing down on a dig route or if a linebacker is undercutting a crossing route or a post. Like, he's like, I don't care. My arm is strong enough. I layer balls better than almost everyone else in the league with speed. I'm going to fit it in the tight window. And the majority of the time he does, but there's also reality that he really doesn't do that. And if we look at the interceptions, obviously tied for first with Kirk Cousins, and the turnover-worthy plays were also top in the league. He had 24 turnover-worthy plays, which tied Sam Darnold and Kirk Cousins. Now the turnover-worthy play rate, kind of the middle of the pack at 3.5%, but I think the interception volume is high because the passing volume is so high, and the risky throw volume that he has is really high. And I think that's what makes Baker Mayfield who he is. So he could be a little bit more conscious about protecting the football, which I think Gizzard is going to make it a point to him this season, because they've been trying to establish this offense over the past couple of years. Now it looks like Gizzard is going to come in as a receivers coach and have that knowledge of like, hey, like, don't put my receivers in danger. Like, you need to make sound decisions. And I think that might help him dial it back a little bit. But other than that, I think Baker is at the peak of his career and he's still getting better. And I think that change is seen leaving Cleveland, getting shuffled around in Carolina and LA, and now he's here and now he's the guy. Like, sky's the limit. I've always loved Baker Mayfield. I thought he got a bad rep coming out of college. But he's the type of modern swagger, like Jim McMahon style quarterback that you want in the NFL today. And he's a damn good passer to go with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about Bucky Irving for a second.
Yeah.
He was definitely one of the breakout stars of just, honestly, the whole NFL last year.
Absolutely.
He quickly, you're a dynasty football player, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, in my league, he got picked up by this one guy in my league that kind of is, a perennial playoff misser. But he picked up Bucky Irving at the end, like midway through the season, and now he's kind of one of his franchise guys. So for you, I mean, where did Bucky Irving come from, like in terms of how he kind of broke it, how he was able to break out, and what do you expect from him this year?
Yeah, when I scouted Bucky Irving, he was my RB1 of the 2024 class, and a lot of people looked at his size and how undersized running backs don't pan out, especially when they don't have high-end athleticism. Like, him and Jahmyr Gibbs have very similar builds, but Jahmyr Gibbs is a far better athlete. But what I think a lot of people miss is Bucky Irving understands he's not the best athlete, and he uses that to his advantage. And he allows rush lanes to develop, and he has superb ball carrier vision. Like his lateral, like peripheral view is undeniably one of the best in the NFL. There were gaps that were not there last year. He made one jump cut and his head would shift and he would find this other lane and break for 10, 15 yards. Also, he has great contact balance. He's got good pass catching chops. Like he's the if you don't have a home run hitter, he is the best running back to have that doesn't have home run ability. Like I loved him coming out of college. And what I saw in college translated perfectly to the NFL. And he ran zone concepts. He ran man and gap concepts. Like he ran everything under the sun and exceeded at a high level. I think I drafted him in the 3rd round in my dynasty league because I was so confident that he was going to beat Rachaad White, which he obviously did. Now with the new regime in place, we'll see who takes over as the lead back and gets the most carries. But I don't think it's going to be as big of or as much of a split as it was last year. And as people are projecting this year, I think he's going to get 60 to 70% of those carries. And he's going to get used in the pass game a lot more than Rachaad White, just because he showed how damn good he is as a pass catcher, which like he had that at Oregon, but it wasn't put on full display like it did with the Bucs last year. I mean, he's one of my favorite players, and I victory lapped him from I think like week 8 on until the end of the season. Like I don't think I victory lapped someone faster than I had Bucky Irving.
Yeah, dude. Honestly, there's no better feeling than like kind of being right on a gamble in dynasty fantasy football.
Absolutely.
Anyone here is listening that doesn't play dynasty fantasy football, cannot recommend it enough. It's like the best way, in my opinion, to play fantasy football.
Yeah, I just joined another dynasty league because I love it so much.
Yeah, It's a little extra involved, but it's honestly so much more rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
I want to bring up the Mike Evans thing. So obviously, there's been questions about how much longer Mike Evans is willing to go in this league, right? Mm-hmm. So now you got young guys like Bucky Irving coming up. Do you feel like there's going to be kind of obviously he's a running back though, but he's a receiving back. Do you feel like there's going to be a little bit of internal competition to see who's going to become the kind of the prime target for Baker over the next couple seasons this year?
I think so, and I think it's Emeka Egbuka. Like this is like him and Matt Golden are similar in terms of I don't think either of them will ever be wide receiver 1s, but they will be awesome wide receiver 2s. Working in the Z spot, they can move into the slot. And with Chris Godwin out, like Egbuka is the perfect replacement for him. Like he's a savvy route runner. He's got really strong hands, a good yak ability, and he's just another Ohio State wide receiver product who translates really well to the NFL and what NFL schemes do. And I think the best part about Egbuka's game is the suddenness and fast twitch in his hips and his knees and how fast he can get in and out of breaks. Because we talked about it a few episodes ago. Like in the NFL, you don't have to be the best route runner. You just have to maintain your speed out of your break and you'll beat anyone in this league. And he did that better than anyone in this class, I thought. And that's what is going to make him such a good focal point. And I don't think he'll lead the Bucs in targets this year or even next year if Mike Evans is around again. But by year 3 until, year 8, 9, 10 for him, he should be the Bucs leading target. And for the dynasty guys out there, you should be targeting Emeka Egbuka because he is a dog.
Absolutely. I don't have my draft up here from my dynasty league this year, but he definitely went
early.
Let's talk about this Bucs defense.
Mm-hmm.
You've described them as underrated.
Yeah.
Can you talk about, where they can shine and where they can kind of move up among the ranks of, just well-known good defenses in this league?
Yeah, and I think we have to kind of talk about how they performed last year, right? Because, on paper, you can look at them. They might have not been the best defense, but they were pretty efficient. And in terms of overall defense, efficiency-wise, they were middle of the road. But, they were 17th in EPA per play allowed, 19th in EPA per drop back, but 7th in EPA per rush allowed. The run defense is good. And the main reason why the pass defense isn't as strong as it should be is the pass rush has been lacking in recent years. But they have done a good job of building this defense with reliable stud veterans, bringing in young core players, having a lot of rotational pieces, and making splashes in free agency in the draft, right? So getting into those reliable studs, I have to call out Levante David. He is probably the most underappreciated player in the NFL. He is still a top 5, arguably top 3 linebacker in the league. When people will look at tackles and say, "Oh, that's the best linebacker." No, like coverage is a huge part, and he's one of the best cover linebackers in the NFL and understanding zone spacings in zone coverage. Vita Vea is just a freak on the inside. He literally looks like a monster, and he is a monster as a pass rusher and a run stopper, which someone his size should not move the way he does. Antoine Winfield, another guy, a top 10 or top 5, arguably top 3 safety, and has moved around. Like he's played nickel, he's played strong safety, he's played exclusively over the top the past few years. Like he's done it all, and he's done it all at a high level. And then Jamel Dean, kind of like an afterthought in this defense because he's not like a superstar, but he is good. Like he's a solid corner. I think he's dropped off a little bit the past couple of years, but he's still, I would say top 20 in the quarterback market, which is a good thing to have. And then you have your young core players. Zion McCollum broke out last year as the corner opposite Jamel Dean and finally looked like an NFL player and a good one at that. Tyke Smith was one of my favorite players in last year's draft class as a safety / nickel. I don't know if he's going to be the full-time nickel this year, but he's definitely going to be the full-time strong safety and get some slot reps, which he excels at. And then Yaya Diaby is like, I want to say he's like 6'4", 270 at edge, and he plays stand-up edge, which is just ridiculous for someone his size. He is perfect opposite someone we'll talk about later who they just added via free agency, but just a really good pass rusher for his size. And because of his size, it helps out in his run defending, which he's not the best run defender, but having the extra 20 pounds compared to your other edge counterparts is huge. And then as far as rotational players, Christian Izzian, another safety / nickel who's pretty solid. Servosia Dennis is going to be getting some starting linebacker reps, and this is a developmental guy they took a couple drafts ago, and I think he's ready to not be a full-time player, but definitely be a starter in the league. Logan Hall, who is a really big defensive lineman, but doesn't really play like it. He's got some twitchiness to him, which is good, but want to see more from him this year. Chris Braswell, an edge out of Alabama a few years ago, pretty solid off the edge. Will be a rotational guy, but should see some more snaps this year than he has before. And then Deion Jones, just a veteran linebacker who was I think he was an all-pro at one point in his career. Might have been second team, but definitely was a good linebacker at one point. Provide some veteran depth in case Servosia can't figure it out. And then they added Hassan Reddick, who's going to be playing opposite Yaya Diaby, like perfect differing skill sets. Jacob Parrish, who is listed as the starting nickel, he's super feisty and is a really good nickel. And I think taking him kind of isn't an indictment of Tyke Smith, but they want Tyke to play safety rather than nickel because being in the slot full time is tough to do. And I think Parrish did a better job of that than Tyke Smith did. Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame, a good corner, kind of take up the wings after Jamel Dean will eventually leave this team, or if they can't get a new deal done with Zion McCollum, just added corner depth. Anthony Walker, another veteran linebacker, and then Elijah Roberts as an interior defensive lineman, giving some depth to this D line. So they're deep, they're young, they have veterans in the right spots and where it matters. And I think this defense could crack into top 12 territory with who they have in the wings coming up and just with the depth that they have.
Absolutely. And then we're entering year 4 of the Todd Bowles head coaching era. Obviously, he's been with this team for a little bit longer. He's been with the team since 2019, where he was the defensive coordinator from 2019 to 2021. Obviously, you got a defensive-minded head coach. Where do you feel like Todd Bowles can take this team?
I think he's always done a good job of using the talent he has as best as he can. And I want to see a few more things change, which we'll get into with the dark horse. But I think in terms of the secondary and the linebacker play, he's one of the brightest minds in terms of coverage. He's not over aggressive. He just kind of likes to sit back and let his guys sit in space and figure it out. He'll blitz here and there, but he likes to just not change things up for his defense and make things simple and say, hey, we'll drop a guy like an edge rusher into coverage here and there, which is partly why they got Hassan Reddick. Not that he's a good in drop coverage edge rusher, but he has experience with it. And I think he kind of wants to be a little more multiple, especially now that they don't have besides Levante and Vita, they don't have someone who can kick ass in the front seven. So I think he's going to want that versatility. But I think he just needs to do what he's been doing because this defense has gotten better and better every year. And he just needs to trust that the young guys are going to develop and be in the right position instead of trying to dial up something extravagant because you need it. Like, he wants to be able to sit back and call his defense the way he wants to. So he finally has a team that I think he can do that with, and that's going to help them out in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's get into your dark horse, Kalijah Kancey, defensive tackle. What do you want to see out of him this year?
I want to see better run-stopping chops because when I scouted him when he came out of Pittsburgh, he, by far was a super polished defensive tackle pass rusher, and that hasn't necessarily fully translated to the NFL, but he's improved his pass rush in the past 2 years. He went from an 8.9% pressure rate to a 10.4. He went from an 8.3% pass rush win rate to a 9% pass rush win rate. Like, you're seeing small improvements, especially in the true pass rush game. But I think what might help him, and this is what I alluded to a couple of minutes ago when I was talking about Todd Bowles, I think he's misaligned because he's just over 6 foot. He's just around 290 pounds, maybe even a little bit lighter when we're in the season. And he plays in the B gap more often than Logan Hall. And Logan Hall is much bigger and much stronger than Kancey. And vice versa. Kalijah Kancey is not playing over the tackle nearly as much as Logan Hall is. And I think in the preseason, it's a limited sample size. He only played 9 snaps, but 6 of them were over the tackle, and the other 3 were in over the guard, inside the guard, over the center. So small sample size, but that use is right there. Logan Hall was on the field with him for those snaps. So you kind of got to see how they're going to use Kalijah this year. And I think that's going to suit him better because I think he's got juice to beat the guard in the B gap, and he's got enough pass rush prowess to run the loop against the tackle. And I want to see him do that in this new fit that they're kind of, showing, which granted, it could be preseason. They could be trying it out and they might not even do it. But I think to get the most out of Kalijah and to add another layer to this defense, letting him hang out around the edge more and having Hassan Reddick line up in a wide 9 and he lines up in a 4 or a 5 tech on the tackle, that's going to open up a lot of layers to this defense that I don't think have been there since he's been with the Bucs. And I just really liked him coming out of college. He hasn't shown, he's shown flashes, which in the NFL, if you can show you can do something, that means you can do it repeatedly. He's shown good run stopping chops, but he's also shown that he'll get blown 5 yards off the line of scrimmage and completely taken 2 gaps over. He struggled as a run defender in the league. With that, I think he has improved there, just like he's improved in his pass rushing over the past couple of years. It's just his pass rushing went from average to slightly above average, and his run defense went from bad to slightly below average. He's improving. Now he's got to level out and take it to that next level and show that first round pedigree that he was taken with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, pass rushing is important, but you gotta get some guys in the ground game. Final question. We talked a lot about the defense. So your final verdict, can they be enough to give the offense some help and get back to the top of the division this year?
I absolutely think so. I think they are in the best position to win this division. And I think this defense has the depth, it has the pieces, and I think they're finally figuring out where they want to play certain people to really get the most out of the scheme and get the most out of the players they currently have. And I know Levante David wants to win another Super Bowl. Vita Vea and Antoine Woodfield are superstars in this league that don't get talked about enough because they play for the Bucs. And there's just better defenders at their position, but that doesn't mean they're bad. They're just really freaking good. They just get overshadowed. But I would love to see them win the division again and the defense be one of the factors of it rather than an afterthought.
Yeah, actually, you know what? You bring up a great point. I kind of want to add another kind of burning question here. Obviously, there's been a lot of changeover since, the 2021 season, or sorry, the 2020 season from when the Bucs won the Super Bowl. But there's still a couple guys hanging around from that team.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like there's been enough continuity? I mean, obviously Todd Bowles as well. Like, so it kind of starts at the top down. Do you feel like there's been enough continuity from that Super Bowl winning team for there still be that hunger to get back?
Yeah, I absolutely think there is, because like when you get veterans in the building that have won before and they've made more money than they know what to do with, right? Like Levante David has done everything he needs to be a Hall of Fame linebacker, right? Like, why not add another Super Bowl title? You have nothing else to gain from the sport, right? Like, go after a title, go make it happen. Like, having guys like him in this locker room, and they have it on the offensive side too with Mike Evans, right? There is guys in this locker room that have been there. There's guys that want to go back, and you never really, and I could be completely wrong, but like, I feel like when it comes to contracts and paying guys and having a good foundational locker room, you barely hear about the Bucs with any controversy surrounding that. Like, they pay their guys and they get them to stay in the building. And I think it's a really good culture. And I think it starts with Todd Bowles, and it's, echoed through guys like Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, Vita Vea, Levante David, like Antoine Winfield. Like, they have a really good locker room, a really good management, just a really sound structure. And I think Bruce Arians helped develop that. And I still believe he's working in the front office for the Bucs. And as long as he's there, I think that's going to continue. And I think this is a team that, although they don't have the star power as the other big-time teams have, if I had to put money on the Bucs, I would not think twice about it for them to get back to the Super Bowl, especially with this roster.
Nice. Awesome. And let's keep talking defense, specifically the Atlanta Falcons defense.
Mm-hmm.
For you kind of feel like they've finally gotten it together. Where have you seen the most improvement on this team, and where do you think they can improve them from their 8-9 record last season?
Yeah, I think they improved the pass rush, which has been the biggest pain point for the Falcons since, Vic Beasley had his big breakout season, which is why we say sacks don't matter as much. Like, sacks do matter, and they matter the most. Let me rephrase that. But they don't matter as much as people think they do, and it's not an indication of pass rush quality. Like, Vic Beasley, when he not broke the sack record, but led the NFL in sacks in 2016, his pressure rate was abysmal. I think it was under 10%. Like, his pass rush win rate was slightly above that. Like, he was not a good pass rusher. He just, when he won, he got sacks. Like, So since then, they haven't really had a quote unquote good pass rusher since he left. And over the past 3 years, they have allowed the fifth, and this is combined from 2022 to 2024, they have the fifth highest EPA per dropback allowed. And in terms of PFF, they've had a bottom 6 pass rush grade in each of the last 3 seasons, and they placed second twice, second worst. Like, this defense has not been good from a pass rush perspective. So this offseason was tailored towards adding pass rushers. And they bring in a veteran, Leonard Floyd, who has started almost everywhere he's played and has showed he's a decent pass rusher. He's not – you're not screaming, oh, Leonard Floyd's a top 10, top 20 edge rusher, but he provides some juice there, and he's a savvy veteran. Then they drafted James Pierce Jr. and Jalen Walker, which it looks like Jalen Walker is exclusively going to play edge. I think they could get a little bit more out of this defense if he played off-ball early downs and then moved to the edge on later downs. And let James Pierce work opposite him in pass rush situations, because I think both of them provide good pass rush juice in different ways. I just don't know if Jalen Walker can do it 3 downs or all 3 downs just because of his size and, some areas he was lacking in his college game. Like, he was a super fun college player and probably the best blitzing off-ball linebacker, but I don't know if that's going to translate to 500 pass rushes a season strictly off the edge. But again, we'll see. I'm just happy they added 3 guys who can help with that pass rush depth. Morgan Fox, a veteran DT, more of a run stopper, but still has some pass rush juice. And then Braylon Trice, he missed all of last year with an ACL tear. He led college football in 2023 in total pressures, like, out of Washington. Like, I wasn't the biggest fan of his process, but he won often. And play strength is going to be big for him, especially coming back from the ACL tear. But if he can be healthy, like, that's 4 edge rushers right there who are really, really solid and all have different skill sets, where James Pierce will play through your chest, and so will Braylon Trice. And Jalen Walker will beat you with speed and with a hand rip chop. And Leonard Floyd has a pretty decent package for with inside counters, with spin moves, with swims, like more that finesse guy. Like they all have different skill sets. And as someone who's talked to offensive tackles, that is the worst thing to deal with. Is not just going against one guy that's really good, going against four guys who are all good and have different skill sets. It's tough to prepare for it, and it's just a mental game where you have to work against each guy, and all of them are different. So your kick steps change, your strike pace changes, your hand placement changes. Like it can really mess with an offensive tackle. And I think the Falcons evaluated their roster really well and said, yeah, we can get a lot better in this area. Let's go do it. And on paper, looks like they're going to.
Yeah, it's very – how unique would you say it is for a front office to, hyper-focus their offseason acquisitions on one – obviously not only one, but on one major area like the Falcons have done with their pass rush?
I think it's something that other front offices can learn from, because I think some front offices said, oh, we take one guy here, we're fine, like we'll let them develop and we'll punt, more depth to next year. But sometimes with contracts, like two guys at the same position, their contract will be expiring the same season and they'll both leave. And so now you have two holes that you have to fill, and that goes against your previous draft strategy. And I think we're seeing more teams across the league double dip at the same position. Like, I know this was a while ago and a completely, different example, but, the Washington, at the time, the Redskins, but now the Commanders, drafted RG3 in the first round and then got Kirk Cousins in 7th round. He might have been 6th round in that draft, but I think he was 7th. And obviously that was an awesome move for them and saved them a lot of, time and money not having to rebuild and find a new quarterback, because they had it with Kirk in that draft. This year, the Browns took Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. We've seen teams over the past couple of years double dip a receiver like the New England Patriots. I know neither of them panned out last year, but Jalen Polk and Javon Baker both were drafted in the same draft class, right? So you see teams where it works out for them and other teams where it doesn't. And I'm wondering if the Falcons were aware of that and said, why don't we double dip in the first round and get two high pedigree edge players, both with great athleticism, and let's see what we can make happen with them. And if not, we have two veterans in their place and a guy who didn't even play last year coming back who can give us some depth. So they really are 4 or 5 deep at the edge position. And I think it was really good process because it was their most glaring position and they double dipped in high pedigree areas for that.
Absolutely. And speaking of Kirk Cousins, he's currently listed 2nd on the Falcons depth chart right now, behind Michael Penix Jr. There was maybe some talk of some quarterback competition, but it seems like Penix has, gotten the spot. And, he's continuing to grow in this league, and he's got a great receiver next to him in Drake London. So for you, what do you want to see out of that connection this year?
Well, I just want to see Michael Penix. He makes some really gutsy throws, and then he makes some throws that aren't even close, right? Like, and not that they get picked off, because I think he only threw 1 interception last year, if I'm not mistaken. But let me see. He threw 3, but either way, 3 in 5 games. But in that starting run, I believe he only threw 1 at the end of the season. But I want to see him be more trusting of Drake London, which is what we saw, especially it progressed at the end of the season from week 16 to 17 to 18. The targets and receptions and yards went up for Drake London in each game. But in those 3 games starting together at the end of the season, and granted, 2 of the past defenses they won it against were some of the worst in the NFL, and then the other one was against the Commanders, who they still did pretty well against. But in those 3 games, Drake London commanded 37 targets, so over 12 per game. Brought in 22 receptions, over 7 per game. 352 yards, over 114 per game, or 115, more than that, 116. Maybe more than that. My math's probably wrong. It's early. 4.05 yak per reception, which isn't that great, but here's the number that really stands out. 3.52 yards per route run. 3 is elite. Getting on the closer side to 4 than you are than 3 is really, really good. And he had 15 first downs. So he's moving the chains 5 times a game, which is great. And so over the course of a 17-game season, and I know, small sample size, we shouldn't do this, but I think it's a fun thought experiment to see what it could be from an efficiency standpoint. That's 210 targets, 125 receptions, 1,995 yards, 506 yards after the catch, and 85 first downs. My notes are wrong here, but that would break season records in targets and in yards. It wouldn't break the receptions, but it would absolutely break the yardage record. Someone getting close to 2,000 would be absolutely atomic and nuclear in this league, right? Especially because receiver yardage hasn't been what it was pre-2022, which, again, it's the too high shells. Not so much that teams are running a lot more cover 2 and cover 4. It's just the fact they're starting in too high a lot more, so quarterbacks are not taking risk against it in the deep game. So I think if Michael Penix if the Falcons can leverage this run game with Bijan Robinson and force teams to play one high safety more often than, other teams that they would play, that's going to open up this connection a lot more between Penix and Drake London. And I think Bijan is one of the best shining young running backs in this league. And if there's any team that can force teams into one high safety, it's going to be the Falcons.
Yeah, and what does Bijan Robinson add to this? Like, how much can you kind of turn this offense into a Penix, Bijan, London, trifecta here?
Yeah, and I should correct myself. It's Bijan. I think he said, not Dijon, it's Dijon, Bijan. But either way, that's how you pronounce the name. It's whatever. But what I will say is that his snap share has increased, and it increased over the course of last season. Like throughout, if you look at each quarter of the year, his snap share increased. He's got really good wiggle when he's in open space and between the tackles. He's got great burst and acceleration. His juke move is one of the best in the NFL. I mean, we saw that his rookie year. He juked out 3 Packers players with the same exact stutter juke. He's got really good lateral movement, and he's got home run ability. And to go with it, his receiving ability is off the charts. So he is a do-it-all guy who's going to be the bell cow for them. Tyler Algier will still get a good amount of carries, but Tyler Algier is also a good running back. He's probably one of the best spell running backs in the league outside of David Montgomery. Tyler had 1,000 yards rushing his rookie year behind one of the best offensive lines in the league, which makes sense why they drafted Bijan, because it was, well, if some 5th-round rookie can get 1,000 yards for us, let's see what a really good prospect can do for us in Bijan, right? So he brings another layer to this offense in terms of explosiveness, pushing the chains, pushing the envelope as a receiver, and just doing a really good job of keeping this offense moving. And I don't think the offense is going to flow through him as much as people project, but I think he will absolutely be one of the 2 main focal points, that being Drake London and Bijan.
Absolutely. And finally, we talk about the trifecta, but really at the core of it is Michael Penix. Can he be the next franchise quarterback for this team?
I absolutely think so. I was not as high on him as some other quarterbacks in last year's class, and he probably would have ranked similar to where I had Cam Ward in this year's class. But I think, which we'll get into the NFC or AFC South episode later, but if I think Cam Ward can be a franchise QB, absolutely Michael Penix can be one, because I think he's got similar passing mechanics. His arm is really live. He's got good pocket management and ability to process pressure. And that's what makes a good quarterback in the NFL. So I want to see him succeed. And also, it's just fun to see lefty quarterbacks do their thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And let's get into probably Atlanta's biggest rival, New Orleans Saints.
Mm-hmm.
The Saints really struggle.
Do we go over the dark horse?
No, we did not go over the dark horse. Sorry.
Yeah, we definitely want to touch on that, because that's Brandon Dorless, another Oregon stud from last year's draft class that I really liked. He played, and this is going to be quick, but he played just 19 snaps in 2024 due to injuries. But at his time at Oregon, he was splitting reps at edge and defensive tackle. He moved more inside as his career went on, but he succeeded at both. And he's going to be competing with Rook Ohoroho. I messed up that name horribly. Rook Ohorohoro and Zach Harrison for reps alongside David Onyemata. And Onyemata's, he's 30. He might even be 31. He's on the older side. He's not going to be there much longer. So he's going to be competing for some good playing time early on. And we've seen him play in the preseason. He's done a decent job going against guards and working the edge on some other plays. He can play up and down the line, which I think is going to help with the versatility of this pass rush, which, again, it helps that you got all these edges. Brandon Dorlus is another guy like Braylon Trice who barely played last year and should get reps in pass rush situations. You know, in a really small reality, he might steal some edge reps. Like, let's say their linebacker depth proves to not be what it is and some guys get hurt. Maybe they move Jalen Walker to off ball second half of the season on first and second down, and they put Brandon Dorlus at the edge to really hold it down opposite whoever's going to be on the other side. Like, I think he just provides really good versatility, and I don't know if he'll be a great player or even a good player, but he will definitely be above average and a really good rotational depth piece on this team this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, just continuing to build that Falcons defense.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get into one of the Falcons' biggest rivals in the division, the New Orleans Saints. Not much of a rivalry last year. Saints really struggled. They went 5-12 with Derek Carr, kind of leading the way at quarterback. But then he obviously retired this year. They don't have a clear QB1. So could you kind of talk about what you're seeing from that scenario right now?
Yeah, it looks like Shuck's going to win the job, and I think it's because Rattler just makes too many mental errors, especially when processing pressure and getting the ball out. We saw that a lot last year. I know a lot of people liked him coming out of South Carolina. I liked him, but I think he was like my 8th quarterback. I did not have him ranked that high for what I remember, but I think he's a fine quarterback and could do well in spot start situations. And I think Shuck is kind of in that same category. And Shuck's also 26 years old. Like, I don't know how much more development you can get out of a guy who's a 26-year-old rookie. Like, if it didn't work for Brandon Weeden when he was 28, he's 2 years younger, but Shuck, I think, is just like Rattler, like a good spot starter. I don't know if he's ever going to be a franchise QB for somebody. I think this might just be a Band-Aid pick. But if you're taking a Band-Aid guy in a relatively weak quarterback class, I don't know why you used a premium. They used the 40th overall pick on this guy. I like Shuck. I don't know if I like the value for what they took him at. I think there were 1 or 2 better quarterbacks in this class than him. But, this roster is just a mess even outside of the quarterback position. So no matter how Rattler and Shuck play, they could swap games. They could swap every snap. This roster is such a mess that I don't think it's going to matter what you try with them. You could play 2 quarterback. You could put 2 guys back there, put Alvin Kamara in the middle, and have the quarterback or the center direct snap to one of the quarterbacks. And I still don't think this roster is good enough to I think you could try that and get away with it because the roster is such a mess. It's counterintuitive, but I mean, if we look at this running back room, Kamara is clearly the starter, but they have some deep pieces. They have Kendry Miller, who looks like he's finally going to get a shot at some spell reps. I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is who he is, but he's played well previously. I mean, Cam Akers is who he is also. Unfortunately, 2 Achilles tears is going to derail what was looking like a promising career. And then Devin Neal, a rookie out of Kansas, who I think is kind of not exactly like Kamara, but is of the same archetype as a running back. And I really liked him in this class. But I don't know who you're going to fill in when Kamara needs a breather, who you're going to put in. It's going to depend on where you're at on the field, the defense that you're facing. And I think that you don't get into a rhythm like that. When you're playing matchups rather than letting guys get reps and get comfortable in the offense you're trying to run. That works in high school and college, but in the NFL, that really doesn't. And then if we go further to the wide receiver room, Olave good, but if Olave's out, Rashid Shaheed's a one-trick pony on deep balls. They just traded for Devon Bell, which we speak of old rookies. He's 27 as a sophomore in the NFL. I don't know why they traded for him, but they did. Mason Tipton has done really well in the preseason. Maybe he provides some juice in the pass game, but I'm not really sure what else they're going to do in the pass game. I mean, Jawan Johnson's fine. Taysom Hill's fine. But as far as pass catchers, I'm not really sure if they have a higher ceiling than any other team in this division. What were you going to say?
Can I throw a hypothetical at you? I mean, obviously we don't know. Olave's timeline is kind of weird this season, but say he was fully healthy. What could a healthy Chris Olave change for this Saints receiving core?
I think it ends up being a really good one because if Olave is playing, he's playing the X position, and I know he's a little undersized, but he's a damn good route runner, and he knows how to get open, even in press coverage, right?
Mhm.
So that allows them to use Devon Bell, who's 6'4", 6'5", and use him as a power slot, which is what the Broncos did. 70% of his snaps came from the slot, right? So I think that's going to be that's where he's going to play if Olave is, healthy. And then Rashid Shaheed will be the deep threat, and Mason Tipton will fill in the slot. And if Olave needs a breather, Tipton will fill in for him, or they'll move Bell outside because he's got the size for it, and Tipton moves to the slot, right? So, like, if Olave is healthy, I think the receiving room is actually pretty decent. But if he's not healthy, which is a big question mark, I think they aren't going to be as versatile as they want to be with some of the guys that they've acquired. And can I just say that the Bell trade, like, it's a 4th and 7th round pick, which is pretty much the same equivalency in terms of value as a 3rd round pick, which is what George Pickens got. Like, George Pickens was traded, or the trade value was a 3rd round pick for George Pickens. So you're saying that George Pickens, who's 2 to 3 years younger than Bell, is worth the same value? Like, to me, this trade made no sense. And I think that they have some issues in the receiver room depth-wise, but for that value, I just didn't understand it. But anyways, and then offensive line, huge question mark outside of Eric McCoy at center. Trevor Penning is moving to guard, and we've seen a good track record of oversized guards moving into the inside of the interior offensive line. Kelvin Banks, who I projected more as a guard, he's going to be the starting left tackle. Talise Fuaga, who I really liked in last year's class, is moving to right tackle. But again, that change in position after your first year, there is a learning curve there, as we saw with Paris Johnson last year, who was locked down the second half of the season, but, struggled a little bit early on. And then Cesar Ruiz, who is, I'm sorry, he's not a starting guard in the NFL. Like, he's just starting because they don't have anyone else, and it's a shame that that's the case because I kind of liked him coming out of college, but he's just not panned out. So between in every level of this offense, the roster's a mess, right? And then defensively, the defensive line looks really good and is probably going to be, it's going to be above average and probably is going to be good, but they just have like Cam Jordan is there, who's like a good veteran presence, but is not the player he was even 2 years ago. Carl Granderson is an up-and-coming, really good edge player. Chase Young is not what he was. Fidel Diggs is a super interesting prospect out of Syracuse. And then on the interior, Brian Bresee, Davin Gacho, Nathan Shepard, Vernon Vernon, and Christian Boyd is a really good defensive tackle rotation, but I don't think any of them are good. I think all of them are above average rotational players. And that's kind of a problem where you don't have a true stud on this defensive line. You just have a bunch of above average guys who are going to rotate and play. We'll see how it shakes out. And they've shown they have a horrible track record for defensive line anyway. So who even knows if half these guys pan out the way that they should. And then quickly, just to wrap up the rest of their depth, Demario Davis is awesome, but I'm not really sure about anyone else in the linebacker room. We'll get into one of them later, but he has some of his shortcomings. And then this secondary is feisty, but not uber reliable. Like, Kool-Aid McKinstry is going to be a good starting corner for them. But Alante Taylor has been hit or miss throughout his career. Ugo Amadi, kind of the same deal. They added Julian Blackman after Tyrann Mathieu retired. He had a good rookie year, but, kind of hit or miss since then. So it's an interesting defensive group. I don't think there's anyone besides Demario Davis that is going to be a headliner on this defense. Maybe Kool-Aid McKinstry, because I liked him coming out of Alabama last year. I believe he was my number 3 corner in last year's class. But, we'll see what happens depth-wise. But this team does not move the needle for me, especially with that quarterback room.
Yeah, absolutely. And, looking around the roster, there was a lot of guys retiring from last year, right? And, nothing against those guys. A lot of them, it's like some really talented players. But it kind of feels like this Saints roster is one that really could have benefited from getting young fairly quickly. So for you, some of these departures, how do you feel like they kind of help just kind of open up this roster a little bit and help them kind of focus in on a much younger core?
It's the losses is the toughest part, right? Like it's snaps that you have to replace, right? And I'm not really sure if the only thing they can do is just let these young guys play and let them get reps and let them get experience. Like there is good depth here, and there's probably an extra starter or two somewhere, but the Saints really have to just bite the bullet and rebuild. Like I said with the Steelers last episode, like they have to, because them pushing for the Super Bowl for the past 4 years and trying to load up this roster has put them in the position that they're in. Like Derek Carr, retired. Tyrann Mathieu, retired. Ryan Ramczyk, retired. Marshawn Lattimore, really good corner. You traded away. Lucas Patrick is fine, signs with Cincy. Jamal Williams is released and still a free agent and is a good spell back. Kalen Saunders, traded to Jacksonville. Willie Gay, signed with Miami. Paulson Adebo, who had a great 2023 season, signs with the Giants. Like, the guys that you should be bringing back, like a guy like Paulson Adebo, like Willie Gay is linebacker depth. Kalen Saunders is a good rotational defensive tackle. Like, Lucas Patrick is lineman depth. Like, you don't need Jamal Williams, but he's a great locker room guy. Like, they're letting guys walk that they really shouldn't be letting them walk, and they're relying on guys who are older and past their prime and are just not good players. I shouldn't say not good players, but not as good as they were. And so, yeah, effectively, like, I don't know what Mickey Loomis is thinking. Like, he should have torn this down years ago when they were in cap hell. I think they were negative $80 million going into one season in cap space, which they worked that out. They restructured contracts. They released some guys that they had, but like, that should have been the point. You got rid of most of these guys. Like, and I think the Derek Carr signing really, like, they didn't lose as much money as the contract said they were going to lose because of some of the injury clauses that they had and that they released him before a certain time, or he retired before a certain time or whatever. But like, that signing in general just made absolutely no sense. And it still doesn't. And now they're in the QB position they are now, when they could have, taken someone else, just a flyer, had a high draft pick, gotten one of the really good quarterbacks from the 2024 class, and been in a much different situation, than they are right now. But the Saints are going to Saint.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to me, it's like when you make a signing like Derek Carr, you're obviously trying to go for it's a short-term move, right? It's a little reminiscent. I don't want to say it's exactly similar, but it's a little reminiscent to the last two stops for Aaron Rodgers, right? But like you have to recognize that short window. So I guess it's good that the Saints did and Derek Carr did as well, and he kind of left after a year. But I want to get into their dark horse, linebacker Danny Stutzman.
Yeah,
really like into this guy.
He's a really good run defender, and he's got NFL size to continue to be a good run defender in the NFL. And I think just the depth of the linebacker position, like, he's got a chance to take over some reps. Pete Warner's there. I don't know if Pete Warner is. I think he's more of a pass coverage guy than a run stopping guy in this defense. So I think he can win those early rundowns pretty relatively quickly. In 2024, he had the second highest run defense grade among all linebackers in all of college football, with 300 snaps in that season. And if he can improve his coverage throughout the year, I don't think there's any reason for him not to start in 2026 with Demario Davis entering free agency. There's not much depth behind him. Maybe they bring Demario back for one more year, but the guy's 34, I believe. Like, he's on the very tail end of his career. Like, still a good football player, but like I said, with this roster, it doesn't make sense to bring someone like him back and try to run it back with the roster with so many holes as it has. But Stutzman, I think, is going to be solid. Like, coverage is not a strong suit, but I think playing with a guy like Demario is going to help that.
Absolutely. And then the big question for the Saints this year, I mean, can they be competitive? Have they assembled the competitive roster this year?
No.
Or do you have – if no, let's just say, I don't know what your answer is yet. I kind of have a feeling what it is. But no, but seriously, if the answer is no, I mean, do you feel like there's a timeline for competitiveness for the Saints?
I think you have to look 2027 and beyond. And I say that because 2 years. And the reason being is that we saw that happen with, not to be a homer, but we saw it happen with the Cardinals, where they were, they stripped everything down with Jonathan Gannon and Monty Ossenfort came in. And now they're a team that might compete to win the NFC West this year, just, in their third year of tenure, right? 2 years later. We might see that with the Panthers this year. Dave Canales comes in. They strip everything down. They reset Bryce Young halfway through year 2, which we'll talk about later this episode, next segment. And they're in a really good position to win this division. So I think the Saints need to look at other teams in the league, and especially in their own conference, and say, what are they doing that we're not doing that they're able to recoup so quickly? And I think if the Panthers do win the division this year, they're going to be like, well, an interdivision rival stripped everything down, rebuilt this defense, retooled the offense for Bryce Young, and wow, they've become a really good team out of a team that was kind of a laughing stock even towards the end of the Cam Newton days, right? So that's going to be the key, is stripping it down, taking your losses for 2 years, even if that means Mickey Loomis gets fired, whatever happens with him. Which I don't know if he can get fired, because I feel like if he could have been fired, he would have been fired way beforehand. But yeah, I think the New Orleans ownership is kind of hanging on to that Super Bowl win, and there's not much else happening outside of that. So I think if he could stay around, he will strip it down, but I think he wants to keep this running to keep his job as long as he can.
Dude, I was like 11 when that Super Bowl win happened.
Yeah.
I'm 27.
Yeah.
That's a long time to hold on to that, man.
Long time ago.
Yeah.
Crazy.
That
was a great Super Bowl.
That was a great Super Bowl. I was pretty miserable during that Super Bowl, though, because that was when – well, I shouldn't say I was miserable, because I was pretty happy because I was rooting really hard against the Colts, because they obviously knocked the Jets out of the playoffs that year. But, man, that's an old Super Bowl to hold on to, for keeping your team relevant.
Absolutely.
But you mentioned the Panthers possibly winning the division this year. Very interesting, specifically in relation to the Saints, because the Panthers and the Saints both finished 5-12 so last year. So, talking about progression, kind of really night and day, where, after a 5-12 season, the Saints are just looking to get maybe like 7-10, 8-9, just kind of have some stability. Meanwhile, the Panthers go from 5-12 immediately into a playoff spot. However, last year, they definitely set the benchmark for where they really need to improve to win that division, and that's with Bryce Young. Bryce Young obviously struggled last year. Could you talk about where his struggles were the biggest and what kind of caused it to kind of his season with the Panthers kind of derail a little bit?
Yeah, so my biggest hang-up with Bryce Young as a prospect when he was coming out, and why I didn't have him as my QB1 in that class, and I like Stroud better, is that he really struggled under pressure. It seemed like whenever a guy got in his face, his accuracy would dip immensely. Like, he was super sharp at the clean pocket or on a designed rollout, but once pressure came in, he looked like a completely different quarterback, and we saw that all of 2023 and through the first weeks of 2024, that when he was pressured, he was just horrible, just downright bad. One of the worst QBs we've seen in the NFL in a long time, right? But gets benched. Dave Canales, the quarterback whisperer, reels him in and says, hey, we're just going to put a veteran out there, let him see how he operates instead of just trusting everything with you right now, and then you'll have your shot later this year, and we'll work it out when we work it out. And that's exactly what happened. From week 8 to 18, after being renamed the starter, there were 28 quarterbacks with 200 dropbacks in that span. His rankings, he was 6th in passing grade at 83.7, which is great. 2nd in total big-time throws at 26. He was 1st in big-time throw rate at 7.7%, which is stupid high. He had the 12th lowest turnover-worthy play rate at 2.3%. And like some people say, well, he was dinking and dunking, like whatever. No, he had the 6th highest average depth of target at 9.3. Like, he was firing the ball downfield. He had the 5th lowest pressure to sack rate at 14.9, which again, something he struggled with. I believe he had one of the highest pressure to sack rates in 2023. And he was 4th in scrambles. So even though he was doing really good passing and mitigating pressure, he still scrambled a decent amount and knew when to scramble, which is a big difference. And if we want to look at those numbers versus pressure, where he drops off and struggles with, he was 3rd in passing grade against pressure at 73.9, 2nd in big time throws at 11, 4th in big time throw rate at 9.4, which the number is naturally going to go up when you're under pressure because that's when big time throws happen, but still good to see an increase there. He ended up having the 4th lowest turnover-worthy play rate at 2.4, again, where he used to rank the highest against pressure. He was protecting the ball better. Third highest in average depth of target, scrambles, and first downs at 13, 23, and 46 respectively, like night and day. And when Bryce Young is on, the rest of this team is on. And we saw that towards the end of last year. And I mean, they knocked the Cardinals out of the playoffs. They competed with the Chiefs and competed with the Eagles. Both are Super Bowl teams. And they added to this defense and they added to this offense. Sky's the limit for this team if Bryce Young plays the way he did in the back half of last year, which I think he's going to, and he's honestly might even play a little bit better.
Can we bring up your dark horse a little bit early because it does have to do with Bryce Young? Yeah, your dark horse is wide receiver Jalen Coker. So you, how does Jalen Coker help Bryce Young kind of hit those goals that you want him to set in 2025?
Yeah, the Holy Cross alum was known for being a contested catch guy, go up and get a guy, but he's a really good intermediate route runner, like posts, digs, comebacks, curls, that's his bread and butter. So he threatens you with the deep ball and being able to go up and get it, and that allows him to use his speed out of breaks to get open on those intermediate routes. And he came alive when Bryce Young returned as a starter. And we're just looking at team ranks, not at the NFL, but on the Panthers themselves, okay? When Bryce Young came back from week 8 to week 18, Coker was tied 4th with 29 targets, 2nd with 308 yards. He was 1st with 18.1 yards per reception. He was 2nd with 1.83 yards per route run, which I don't love that, but let the other numbers speak for themselves. He was 2nd in the 13.1 average depth of target. He was 3rd with 112 yards after catch, 2nd with 6.6 yards after catch per reception, 4th with 11 first downs, and 3rd with a 103.8 passer rating when targeted. That ranked ahead of Xavier Legette, his wide receiver 2 competition this year. He ranked ahead of him in everything except average depth of target, which that just shows Coker is able to make similar plays to Legette and do more with it and play a similar role that Legette does. I think if the Panthers trade Adam Thielen back to the Vikings because the Vikings need receiver help, Legette's going to plug in at the slot. Ted McMillan's going to be the X, and then T-Mac or Tutoria McMillan's going to be the X, and then Jalen Coker is going to be the Z, which is he is perfect for that position in the NFL. And I think he's going to have a big year. I think he's going to be 2nd on this team in targets throughout the entire season. I really like him, and he's going undrafted in some leagues, and in other dynasty leagues, he's not even picked up. So if you're wide receiver needy or you just need a guy to take a shot on late in your drafts, take Jalen Coker because he is in for a big sophomore season, especially with that connection he has with Bryce Young.
Can we give a quick shout out to that 2023 Holy Cross football team?
Oh my God.
That team had some dogs. And look, I'm saying that as a Fordham fan.
Mm-hmm.
For anyone who watches FCS football, you should know, I'm giving credit. Holy Cross is obviously my school's biggest rival. I do kind of try to give them some credit because my sister actually is a Holy Cross alum. So the Basel family is a bit split in that regard. But yeah, I saw Jalen Coker play at Fordham in 2023 in a 49-47 shootout, which actually saw Matt Sluka, the QB1 at the time. He actually was on the bench for most of the game. He got some rushing plays in, but it was Joe Pisanski that actually started that game. But yeah, between Jordan Fuller, Matt Sluka, Jalen Coker, that team had some
nuts. Jordan Fuller was a freak.
Yeah, he's at James Madison now, actually.
Really? Oh, he followed Chesney. That's why.
Yeah. He was at James Madison.
I think.
No, he's at James Madison now. Yeah.
He is. Okay, I thought he was out of eligibility. I guess.
Nah, he played 4 years at Holy Cross, and now he got another year at
James. Good for him. That's awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, watch FCS football. It's good.
There's some studs there, like Jalen Coker.
Yeah.
We went to week 1 against Merrimack his senior year, and he had 3 head tops for touchdowns in the first half. I've never seen a receiver have the. And granted, yes, it's FCS football, so you can say the talent's a little bit lacking. But I've never seen a receiver at any level just have so much confidence and perfect pacing on jump balls the way Jalen Coker did. Like, he's sick. But I appreciate you bringing the dark horse up early because, this offense is going to run through, obviously, T-Mac and Chuba Hubbard, but Jalen Coker is a sneaky third option on this team, and I think he'll be second in targets.
So, keeping the side tangent going, you saw that when you saw Holy Cross versus Merrimack, you went to the stadium at Holy Cross?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome stadium.
It is.
Let's get back to the Panthers. Let's talk about the defense. Obviously, the offense, Bryce Young and Jalen Coker can only do so much if the defense is not allowing them to kind of get in comfortable situations. So where do you feel like they could step up the most in 2025 to give the offense the most cushion?
I think your veterans have to come back and play well. Like, Derek Brown was one of the best defensive tackles in the year and had a torn meniscus. So he needs to have a strong season coming back from that. He doesn't need to be the same Derek Brown, but if he can be 80 to 90%, that's still a top 15 defensive tackle in the league, right? Like, and he plays not exclusively nose, but he plays more nose than almost everyone except Dexter Lawrence, and he's damn good at it. Like, he's sick. JC Horn is another guy. Looked solid in 2022 and 2023, and actually looked really good in 2023 when he came back from a hamstring injury, but he looked bad in 2024, like got exposed a lot. And if you look at those early Panthers games when guys are just burning him, like Chris Olave's burning him, and some other big time receivers, like JC Horn was the guy in coverage. Like, and I was shocked seeing that because he's not a guy to do that as often as he did. And he needs to bounce back and have a really good 2025. And that could have just been adjustment. They might have been playing defense a little bit differently, where after his hamstring, they probably had him playing a little bit simpler coverages, where last year they were, they wanted to lock up a little bit more or play more complicated zone match drops. But either way, both of those two need to come back strong for 2025. And these young guys need to play well. They drafted two good edges in Nick Skirton and Princely Umanamalian. And then Trevin Wallace, who they took in last year's class, looks like he's going to be the starting linebacker. So those three young guys could all get starting reps early, and they need to capitalize on them because we talk about Super Bowl windows and contracts. Bryce Young is still on his rookie deal. He's probably not going to get as big of a deal as like guys like Brock Purdy, Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love have gotten, but he's still going to get a good contract. So how can you leverage? And honestly, if I were the Panthers, I would backload the shit out of that and say, look, we're building this roster. I would pay as many good guys as we can. Bryce, we need you to punt your money towards the back half of your deal. So this way we can build around you because you're a good quarterback. Let's make this happen, right? So they need to use all these young guys and leverage them with the veterans to make a good, sound defense. And I don't think this defense is going to be good. Like they were one of the worst defenses last year and were bad even in that week 8 to 18 stretch. But at least be serviceable, at least be slightly around average, right? Because if you do that, this team makes the playoffs, I believe. And if we want to look at that 2024 defense, they were the worst in EPA per play allowed, second worst in EPA per dropback allowed, and then they were the worst in EPA per rush, success rate, dropback success rate, and rush success rate allowed across the league. And from week 8 to 18, they were the worst in EPA per play, EPA per rush, success rate, and rush success rate. And then their pass defense slightly improved. They were 7th in success rate and EPA per dropback allowed in the pass game. So really bad last year. They're bringing some guys back. They should slightly improve. And if they can get to around the average to below average range, and this offense plays the way I think they can play, this is a playoff team.
Yeah. And the burning question, obviously, if they can get themselves to a playoff team, it'll probably be from winning the division. So the burning question I want to ask in two parts: do you feel like this Panthers team can win the division? And if so, is it going to have to come from basically going 6-0 in division games?
Yeah, I think they can win the division. And I think their only real competition is the Bucs. Like, I like the Falcons, but I think there's a lot of the offense is good, and just like the Panthers, they have a lot of young guys on defense. But I think the young guys they have on defense have more question marks in terms of scheme fit and health and longevity than the Panthers do. Like, the Panthers aren't as deep, but I think they have guys who are going to be longtime starters where the Falcons have guys who are going to be longtime role players, if that makes sense. And I think that's going to give them firepower as long as they stay healthy. If one or two of these starters on the Panthers goes down, they're not making the playoffs. Sorry. And they're definitely not winning the division. But let's say if the Buccaneers take a step back, right? Let's say the offense doesn't click the way it should and the defense doesn't take that step forward under Todd Bowles that we're expecting them to. The Saints flounder like I expect the Saints are going to do this year. I think they're going to be a bottom 5 team in the league. Then you have just the Falcons to worry about. And if Michael Penix Jr. doesn't take that next step and improve on his connection with Drake London, that means the defense is going to tailor towards Bijan Robinson, so he's not going to be as productive. And that's going to give the Panthers, and the Panthers also play a last place schedule. Like, they have a relatively easy schedule compared to everyone else and can win some games that obviously the other teams don't have on the schedule where they're playing tougher teams. So I think that's why, record, I don't think they're going to be better than some of these divisional teams in their division, but I think they have an easier schedule, which will lead to a better record. And I don't think they have to go 6-0, but I think they have to go at minimum 4-2 in the division.
Absolutely. And that'll wrap up the NFC South. We are 5 divisions down. That is 20 teams. Keep checking out our previous podcasts that we've done. You can check those out on Spotify, anywhere else you get your podcasts, on houseenterprise.com, on the House Enterprise YouTube channel. And this podcast, along with the other 4 that we've already done, has been cut up into team-specific segments, which you can find on a playlist on our YouTube channel. So, Jordan, as we hit 20 teams, anything else to preview for our listeners that you're really looking forward to with these last 3 divisions?
I think the NFC West and the AFC West are going to be 2 of the most competitive divisions. I think the AFC South is going to be fun, even though there's some frustrations I have with the AFC South right now. Mm-hmm. We won't name what team, but I think everyone can kind of guess the team. But I think there's a lot of cool, young, scrappy teams coming up through the reins, and some teams that are going to be better than expected than what the national media is currently talking about and what some even people in the football space are expecting of these teams. So still lots of good content to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, I wanted to wrap it up just going back to our side tangent about Holy Cross. They opened their season this year, August 30th at Northern Illinois. That is probably not a game that was immediately on everyone's radar, but I think you should, if you have time, August 30th at 3:30, you should try and take some time to check that one out, because I feel like that could be a very interesting game. To keep listening to our pods breaking down the NFL teams, again go to our House Enterprise YouTube channel. Follow me at the socials below. Follow Jordan at Jordan Laube FB. And until then, we'll see you guys next time.